Hello online students, let's talk about your papers. As you see, these first drafts are not graded. The idea is that I kind of threw you into the assignment and you didn't know what to expect, and so now this next draft will be graded, and so you want to follow my comments very carefully. I'm going to explain some of the general things that are true for a lot of people's papers, and also the deductions that will be taken if you don't follow the instructions. All right, so in terms of the deductions, here are the major deductions that will be taken if these things are not part of your draft, your revised draft. If you don't include your handwritten notes that you were to do when you interviewed your subject, I looked back at my old video and I was very clear about that. You're to be a reporter. Reporters handwrite notes. You can audio record, that's great, but you still need to do handwritten notes at the same time, at the very worst later, but usually at the same time because the audio device might fail you. So you want to have both. But I did require that, and I stated that in the video very clearly. So if you didn't do any notes, which it's hard to believe, maybe you have emails which weren't supposed to do that, you weren't supposed to interview by email, you need to go back and come up with at least a page full of notes. If it's less than a page, that there might still be some deductions. So please have at least a page of handwritten notes, and from every assignment now on, you need to always remember to have handwritten notes. That's part of the assignment. 10-point deduction if no handwritten notes for this. All right, and yeah, that mean you have to go back and write some notes after the fact. Strange, but you don't want the deduction. Okay, if your lead paragraph, so the first paragraph of your article, if it is more than one sentence long, if it's more than one sentence long, that's a 10-point deduction. But I'm really big on one sentence lead paragraph. So the first paragraph, it needs to have a hook of some kind, and we'll talk about in a second, and it needs to be one sentence. If it's not double spaced, if your article is not double spaced, it's a 10-point deduction. Right, I'm big on spacing. If there's extra spacing between the paragraphs, meaning it's more than double spaced, this is sometimes the default on Microsoft Word, depending on what version you have. If there's extra spacing between paragraphs, that's going to be a 10-point deduction. I'm very big on that. I really hate that. So I'm going to show you that you go to the button, the line spacing button, and you're going to, of course, put in 2 for double space, but you're also going to come down here to line spacing options, and you're going to make sure that the 0 is there before and after for points before and after each paragraph. Okay, make sure those are 0, not blank. They need to be 0. All right, and that will remove the extra spacing between paragraphs. Okay, if you don't include the earlier draft that with my comments on it, I won't grade it at all. All right, I need to see my earlier comments. I need to be able to look to see if you did what I told you to do. If there are questions, please email me or come see me. If you can't read my handwriting, that happens. But I need to be able to tell that you did, you made an effort to do what I asked you to do. If I find myself rating the same comments over again, especially as the semester progresses, boy, sometimes I get really frustrated. So you need to do what I asked you to do on that. Okay, and then if you lost it or something, the earlier version with my comments on it, then that'll be a 10-point deduction. I eventually will grade it and just give a 10-point deduction. Okay, so those are some big ones. Now here are some notes about the articles in general. So we had a few people who did a really good job with this, who obviously have some journalism experience or just experience with this writing style from before, and that's great. There are quite a few of you who maybe the assignment wasn't a top priority, or you just, you're not real familiar with news writing style, that's okay. But just keep in mind, you want to take this revision very seriously. You want to be reading a lot of news articles. Again, try to discipline yourself every day to read full articles, the entire article from maybe News USA Today, New York Times, Denver Post, Idaho State Journal. Okay, really be learning the style by studying actual news articles, not merely news, like TV news, but print news. Okay? Okay. Have my dogs walking through the scene. Here are some notes about the articles in general. Don't just make the lead paragraph about where the person is from, about where they grew up, and their major, right? A lot of people are from that town, right? A lot of people are in that major. What sets them apart? Okay, for instance, in the examples, Joe Green, 07, is the Adams State College 2006-2007 South Coloradan editor and was the editor for a weekly paper at the San Luis La Sierra. Okay, not many people can say they've done that. That sets them apart. All right. ISU sophomore Sorrel Gibbons aspires to write a book about the elderly. Kind of interesting. Kind of provides a hook. Tell us more about that. There are 3 more examples I have to show you that provide some more examples of leads, one-sentence paragraph leads, and more examples of this form. Notice all the direct quotes in here, but be very careful about putting things in quotes that you could paraphrase. If it's just information and the person didn't say it with any passion, it doesn't really convey anything really interesting, but it's useful information, then put it in the article. It's just part of the regular text. Okay, maybe a little bit in your own words. It might not be a very good direct quote. Let it be a strong quote. Now, if your person wasn't full of a lot of good quotes, I understand you need to have some sort of quotes, and maybe you had to go with some sort of just okay ones. But if I wrote paraphrase next to a quote, that means maybe this quote should just be, part of the paragraph, the information you provide as the author. Okay, attribution. Remember that there's an order of attribution that we almost always use in journalism. It needs to be the quote, followed by the person's name, and then the word said. We really like the word said in journalism. So, quote, I love ISU, end quote, comma inside the quote marks, Morris said. Okay, so my name, last name, the word said. It's in past tense, so attribution needs to be in past tense for this, and use the person's last name after the first mention of their full name, right? Refer back to them using their last name. Now avoid calling attention to you as the interviewer or the interview itself or the question you ask. Instead, try to just work up to the quote. For instance, some of you wrote something like, when I asked if she liked ISU, Morris said, quote, I've never been happier than here. Instead, write something like this. Morris loves Idaho State. Quote, I've never been happier than here, end quote, she said. Okay, so you need to just kind of work up to the quote without calling attention to yourself. Remember, this is third person. We almost always use third person in journalism, so he, she, they. Be very mindful about that. And notice those are pretty short sentences. Occasionally we throw in a longer sentence in journalism, but it's kind of choppy, the style. And that's, again, why you want to be studying a lot of news articles daily. Okay, another example. In reply to a question about her family, she states, we have 4 kids. Okay, that's, for one thing, we want to be in past tense. We need to move the attribution to the end of the sentence. Let's always have the attribution at the end of the sentence. Again, there are exceptions to everything, but usually the end of the sentence. And it's just not really worth quoting directly, so paraphrase that. We actually have 4 dogs, as you know. Morris and her husband do not currently have children, but they do dote upon their 4 dogs. Okay, so that would be more of a paraphrase there. Okay, now, speaking of dogs, some of you might have had trouble mining something interesting out of the person. You need to try to probe, use deeper questions. It might be things like, what's your most memorable experience of your life? What can you think of a time when it was really tough and you had a hard time getting through, but you did? What's your biggest achievement? Have you had any injuries or illness that you had to overcome? Things like that. And then ask probing questions like, how did you feel in that moment? You know, what was it like to get through that? And how do you feel about it now? Try to really, give them a moment to speak and really dig deeper, ask follow-up questions. If you were interviewing me about the dogs, and some of them are just over here, I don't know, might not want to see that, whatever he's doing. You would just ask, well, why do you have 4 dogs? And how'd you happen to get 4 dogs? And the reason is, before coming here to Idaho, I worked at an animal shelter, and they paid me in dogs. Okay, so I was actually a volunteer, and I volunteered just about every day, and they let us have 2 dogs, and we already bought 1 from them. We never intended to have 4 dogs, and they're pretty big. And then the big question might be, how'd you get them out here? Well, we had to drive 1 vehicle, Subaru Outback, and we actually had a pug then too, an elderly pug who since died. So that was quite an adventure. There always had to be a dog on somebody's lap. One of the big dogs sat between us on the console, on the little thing in the middle of the seat. So, there could be some interesting anecdotes, and that's another thing. Try to get the person talking, get them to tell you little stories, little anecdotes. Okay, so this means some of you might need to re-interview your person, hopefully by phone, if not in person, okay? And remember, handwritten notes. Okay, another thing, 1 theme per paragraph. Some of you are writing really long paragraphs. We have a lot of 1-sentence paragraphs in journalism. Whenever there's a new quote, that becomes its own paragraph, or a new paragraph, right? So indent your paragraphs. If you have a complex theme, that might be more than 1 paragraph. Okay, now word count. You're going to go to the bottom of the screen in the word count after blocking out your text. Probably not your headline, your name, just the text needs to be 400 words or more, and then it will tell you how many words are in the word count. You're going to type that at the bottom of your article. Okay, please make sure to remember the word count. Okay, so this is a good time to mention that once we have these revised, we'll have a good sense of how much work we need to do in this class. I'm very concerned that there's more than usual students, a larger number than usual students had a really tough time with this assignments. And so we'll be able to tell better with the revision because you weren't given a lot up front of information about how to do this. So I probably will talk more about that later. It's really tough to do a course like this online because it's a writing course, and it'd be great if we could have met at least maybe once a week. So I might try a hybrid course like this in the future. Because it's hard to give you that immediate feedback and to do exercises and practice through an online course like this. Anyway, so revise that article, and remember you're bringing it to me, or Virginia, 5 p.m. by 5 p.m. on Friday. So it could be Thursday. If she's not around, you can take it to Shelley, which is the person you picked it up from in Fraser 219. Don't forget, please staple the original version with my comments and your notes onto the back of that. And if you have trouble reading my handwriting, by all means, contact me. Okay, if you don't know what I meant, contact me. And there's usually a few people like that, and I don't mind that, so please let me know. If I put awk or awkward, you need to really read that aloud, think about it. It might just not be a real news writing sort of phrase or kind of a strange word choice. Commas and apostrophes. I used to teach English composition, so you really need to make sure you know how to use those, all right? And we can give you some review exercises and information on those if you need that. By the way, you were to have your English composition prerequisite for this class, not a co-requisite. It needs to be a prerequisite. So if you haven't had that, you may have a lot of trouble doing well in this class, and you may want to email me about that or talk to me about that because you were to have that prerequisite of the English composition course. I will talk to you soon.